You say you want success, but answer me this. What is there in you right now that deserves victory? What in your soul can bear the glory without sinking under it like a weak man under the weight of a crown? You don't want success, you want relief. You don't desire greatness, you desire not to feel so miserable. The truth is this: as long as your desire for comfort is greater than your desire for power, you will never be free, you will never be strong, and you will never be worthy of what you dream of achieving. You come to me looking for a secret, as if mental strength were a mantra, a technique, or a new morning habit. But what you need is a new soul. You need to kill the old tamed spirit that lives inside you, the one that kneels before the opinions of others, that seeks approval like a dog hungry for crumbs, that confuses acceptance with love. That spirit is your prison, and you call the movement. Inside that cell life, it didn't come to give you advice. I came to bring dynamite. Do you want to build a strong mind? Then accept that your current mind is weak. It crawls before your emotions like a slave. It flees from pain like a worm from the light. And everything you call rational is just an elegant disguise for your fear. Nietzsche. But I want to be confident. I want to be resilient. I want to be focused. How naive. Confidence is the scent of victory. Focus is the instinct of those who already have a direction. Resilience is the modern name for what the ancients called honor. And none of this is born in comfort. A strong mind can only be forged in war. War against yourself. War against your own self-destructive impulses. War against the conditioning of the herd. Do you want to know why your mind is fragile? Because you have been trained since childhood to avoid anything that is difficult. You have been taught to seek security, not greatness. To avoid failure, not to face it. To protect yourself, not to surpass yourself. And now, like an apartment dog that wants to hunt wolves, you talk about success. Success requires a wild psyche, not a tame one. You need to relearn how to feel, not like a modern sentimentalist who seeks validation for every little pain, but like a tragic warrior who transforms every blow of life into spiritual muscle. A strong mind is not one that feels no pain. It is one that devours pain and turns it into power. It is not one that never doubts. It is one that carries on even in doubt, because it understands that truth never reveals itself to the weak. Look at how you sabotage yourself. When something goes wrong, you dissolve into guilt, whining, and excuses. When you feel fear, you pretend it's rationality. When you feel envy, you call it justice. Haven't you realized yet that much of your mind has been hijacked by reactive impulses, and that what you call you is just a loose collage of traumas, inherited morals, and neuroses disguised as virtue? A strong mind is one that does not seek approval, but truth. And the truth is this: your mediocrity is too comfortable. You wear it every day like an old, worn-out, but familiar piece of clothing. And like every coward, you have learned to disguise your surrender with pretty words. You say you are realistic when you are just cynical. You say you are being prudent when you are just afraid. You say you are waiting for the right moment when you are paralyzed by the fear of discovering that you are not as strong as you think you are. I know why you haven't won yet, because deep down, you still believe you can win without dying. You still think there is a version of success that does not require the end of the old self. But there is no construction without ruin. Every strong mind is the child of a weak mind's collapse. And if you want to ascend, you will have to go through hell, not as a spiritual tourist, but as someone who recognizes that only by diving into darkness can you find gold. Want success? Then learn to fail. Learn to fall without breaking inside. Learn to see your plans destroyed without your soul surrendering. What separates the great from the mediocre is not the absence of pain, it is the decision not to be defined by it. A strong mind looks at failure and says, "This is where I am forged." Do you know what a strong mind is? It is a mind that no longer needs to pretend, that no longer seeks excuses, that does not run from the shadows, but invites them to dance, that does not beg for hope, but digs for meaning with its own hands. It is a mind that no longer seeks to please, but to assert itself. That is what you must build. A mind that says yes to life, even when it bleeds. A mind that is capable of bearing the weight of its own destiny without shrinking, without becoming a victim, without wishing to return to the womb of ignorance. And that, traveler, is not done with motivational phrases, but with blood, sweat, and silence. A lot of silence. Because it is only in the silence of the spirit that you hear the voice of your deepest will. and it does not ask for comfort, it asks for battle. Perhaps you still don't understand. Everything in you that hurts is trying to wake you up. Your tiredness, your anguish, your anxiety. These are the cries of your truest self, suffocated under layers of obedience, guilt, and herd mentality. Suffering is not your enemy, it is your coach. Pain is the test of the soul, and you will only know if you are strong when you are faced with something that could destroy you, and even then, remain standing, but be careful. Don't confuse strength with toughness. A strong mind is not inflexible. It is like a sword, hard on the blade, but flexible at the base. It knows how to bend without breaking. It knows how to listen without losing itself. It knows how to doubt without betraying itself. It is forged in the fire of confrontation with itself. And every day you avoid that confrontation, your mind rots a little more. You have to decide. Are you going to continue living as a shadow of yourself? Are you going to keep blaming the world for your own powerlessness? Or are you going to look into the abyss within you and say, now it's my turn? Build that mind as one builds a temple. Every impure thought, every excuse, every belief you inherited without question, tear it down. And in its place, raise columns of will, roofs of lucidity, altars of power. Only then can you call your mind a fortress and not a prison. Do you want to win? Then die now. Die to everything that is small in you. Die to everything that is inherited. Die to the old self, and be reborn as someone who no longer needs permission to exist. You want success. You say you want success, but answer me this. What is there in you right now that deserves victory? What in your soul can bear the glory without sinking under it like a weak man under the weight of a crown? You don't want success, you want relief. You don't desire greatness, you desire not to feel so miserable. The truth is this: as long as your desire for comfort is greater than your desire for power, you will never be free, you will never be strong, and you will never be worthy of what you dream of achieving. You come to me looking for a secret, as if mental strength were a mantra, a technique, or a new morning habit. But what you need is a new soul. You need to kill the old tame spirit that lives inside you, the one that kneels before the opinions of others, that seeks approval like a dog hungry for crumbs, that confuses acceptance with love. That spirit is your prison, and you call the movement. Inside that cell life, I didn't come to give you advice. I came to bring dynamite. Do you want to build a strong mind? Then accept that your current mind is weak. It crawls before your emotions like a slave. It flees from pain like a worm from the light. And everything you call rational is just an elegant disguise for your fear. Nietzsche. But I want to be confident. I want to be resilient. I want to be focused. How naive. Confidence is the scent of victory. Focus is the instinct of those who already have a direction. Resilience is the modern name for what the ancients called honor. And none of this is born in comfort. A strong mind can only be forged in war. War against yourself. War against your own self-destructive impulses. War against the conditioning of the herd. Do you want to know why your mind is fragile? Because you have been trained since childhood to avoid anything that is difficult. You have been taught to seek security, not greatness. To avoid failure, not to face it. To protect yourself, not to surpass yourself. And now, like an apartment dog that wants to hunt wolves, you talk about success. Success requires a wild psyche, not a tame one. You need to relearn how to feel, not like a modern sentimentalist who seeks validation for every little pain, but like a tragic warrior who transforms every blow of life into spiritual muscle. A strong mind is not one that feels no pain. It is one that devours pain and turns it into power. It is not one that never doubts. It is one that carries on even in doubt, because it understands that truth never reveals itself to the weak. Look at how you sabotage yourself. When something goes wrong, you dissolve into guilt, whining, and excuses. When you feel fear, you pretend it's rationality. When you feel envy, you call it justice. Haven't you realized yet that much of your mind has been hijacked by reactive impulses, and that what you call you is just a loose collage of traumas, inherited morals, and neuroses disguised as virtue? A strong mind is one that does not seek approval, but truth. And the truth is this: your mediocrity is too comfortable. You wear it every day like an old, worn-out, but familiar piece of clothing. And like every coward, you have learned to disguise your surrender with pretty words. You say you are realistic. Want to know the secret? Every strong mind is built around a non-negotiable core. a commitment to your own greatness. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter how much it hurts. The only thing that matters is that you remain true to that inner calling, to that ancient voice, to that inner cry that says, you weren't born to crawl. But that faithfulness comes at a price, a very high price. Because when you say yes to your greatness, you will need to say no to many things you love, people you care about, places that comfort you, ideas that shaped you, emotions that fueled you. None of that will be compatible with who you are becoming, and you will need to let them go, not with bitterness, but with reverence. Because the butterfly doesn't hate the caterpillar, it just recognizes that it can no longer live as it does. The success you desire is not found in formulas, methods, or mental tricks. It lies on the other side of a journey that begins when you abandon the cowardice of wanting to be everything to everyone, and choose, finally, to be everything to yourself. You need to become dangerous. Yes, dangerous, but not in the vulgar sense of violence. Dangerous like an idea that explodes paradigms. Dangerous like someone who no longer bends to rules invented by weak men. Dangerous because you can no longer be controlled by shame, guilt, or the need to belong. But now, tell me, do you really want this mind? Because it will not be handed over. It will be torn, day after day, from the flesh of your current identity. You will have to die 1,000 times to be born again. You will have to look in the mirror and say, everything I have been until now ... is not enough. You will have to cut ties with your most cherished mediocrity. You will have to say goodbye to comfort, approval, and peace, and do it with a smile on your lips, because you no longer want to be loved, you want to be free. So, before continuing on this journey, answer honestly, are you willing to bleed for your own soul? To lose everything that is small in order to gain something immense? To be misunderstood, ridiculed, rejected, and still carry on? If the answer is no, close this video. Go back to the warm zone of your predictable life. But if the answer is yes, then get ready, because from now on, you will no longer be an ordinary man. You want to build a strong mind, but you still expect the world to change first. You want to be indestructible, but you beg for life to stop testing you. You want power, but you act like a victim. Tell me, how do you intend to master your reality if you are still a slave to your moods? How will you shape your destiny if you can't even bear the loneliness of a quiet Sunday? The mental strength you desire is not compatible with the childish sentimentality you still carry. Do you want to win? Then stop clinging to everything that weakens you. I'm not saying to suppress your emotions. I'm saying to master them. Emotions are beasts. If you don't tame them, they will devour you. A weak mind feels fear and freezes. A strong mind feels fear and acts, not because it is insensitive, but because it knows that fear is just a sign. There is the gate you need to go through. A strong mind does not wait for motivation. It is driven by vision. And vision is not a pretty picture of the future. It is not positive manifestation. Vision is the raw clarity of where you are and the non-negotiable conviction of where you are going. Between one and the other there is pain, fatigue, failure. But the strong mind gets through, not because it is stubborn, but because it is faithful. Faithfulness to oneself. This is the sacred pact that distinguishes a free spirit from an enslaved soul. You need to make this pact with blood, with sweat, with silence, in front of the mirror. No cheap promises, no self-help, no platitudes, just the naked truth. From this day forward, I will no longer betray myself. Because the only thing that keeps your mind weak is the daily betrayal you commit against yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no. Every time you repress yourself to fit the mold. Every time you sacrifice your power to avoid conflict. You have been conditioned to live for others. From an early age, you were taught to be nice, polite, and adaptable, to never rock the boat, to always apologize, to think twice before being yourself. And now, decades later, you are surprised by the emptiness you feel. Of course you feel empty. You have never been filled by yourself. You have only accumulated the expectations of others. To have a strong mind, you need to be selfish. Not in the vulgar sense of the word, but in the most radical sense. Make yourself your absolute priority. Cultivate your own soul as an artist. Cares for their work. Choose your thoughts as a warrior chooses their weapons. Take care of your time as a king takes care of their kingdom. Because if you don't, someone else will do it for you, and they will use your mind as a battlefield for ideas that are not yours. values you don't understand, desires that don't belong to you. You don't build strength with affirmations in the mirror. You build strength with denial, the denial of what is unworthy of you. Say no to comfort, no to distraction, no to distraction, no to cowardice. Say no to everything that keeps you from becoming who you can be. Do you want power? Then start with discipline, not authoritarian discipline, with punishments and rules, but Dionysian discipline, the kind that comes from a love of your own strength, from dancing on the edge of what you can bear, from smiling while you bleed. You will say to me, but Nietzsche, how can one bear the weight of existence without breaking? And I will say to you, you are already broken. What you need to do now is use your broken pieces to cut the ropes that bind you. There is no way back. Either you rise as a creator, or you rot as a follower. Either you transform your pain into wisdom, or you will be just another one dragging golden chains while smiling for the camera. What you call a weak mentality is not a defect, it is a design. Culture, school, religion, the system, they have all worked to make you predictable, obedient, fragile, because that way you are easier to control. Your anxiety is profitable. Your insecurity is marketable. Your fear is fuel for an entire industry of dependency. A strong mind is a threat to all of that, because it doesn't consume hope, it creates meaning. It doesn't beg for acceptance, it commands presence. It doesn't repeat ideas, it creates worlds. But to get there, you will need to make a sacrifice. The most brutal sacrifice of all, the sacrifice of your image. You will need to let go of the comfortable idea you have of yourself. You will have to admit that most of what you think about who you are was built to protect you, not to reveal you. And that image, as seductive as it may be, is the prison that prevents you from becoming who you can be. Prepare to lose. You will lose friends. You will lose status. You will lose certainties. But the loss will not be punishment. It will be purification. Because what remains after renunciation is what is real. And only the real can be strong. Only the real can withstand time, chaos, emptiness. And then, finally, your mind will be like a sword, not to hurt, but to cut through illusions, not to dominate, but to clear the way, not to protect, but to reveal. And you will walk through the world with the silence of those who no longer need to prove themselves, because strength does not shout, it vibrates. It does not justify itself, it radiates. It does not ask for space, it occupies it. But before I finish, I need to confront you. Now, look at your life, at your habits, at your thoughts, at your decisions. Look really hard and answer me. How many of your choices are born of fear and not of will? How many of your thoughts are inherited, not created? What in you still depends on the gaze of others to exist? How long will you use your pain as an excuse rather than fuel? You want power, but can you stand firm when you say no? You want freedom, but do you have the courage to pay the price of being who you are? Stop, breathe, feel the burn of these questions. They are the beginning of your liberation. Don't run away, don't answer quickly. Let them corrode your certainties. Let them break the false foundations of your identity. Only then can you rebuild. You've felt the urgency to change, but you put it off. You've promised yourself you'd be different, but you fell back into the same cycles. You've sworn you'd never sabotage yourself again, and then you gave in to the temptation of comfort. This isn't a coincidence. It's a pattern, and until you understand the origin of this pattern, you'll remain a hostage to it. No matter how much you want to break free, the weak mind is not only ineffective, it is treacherous. It sabotages you from within, with logical arguments, convincing excuses, rationalizations that sound like wisdom but are fear in disguise. It says, wait a little longer. It's not the right time. Maybe it's not for you. And you obey, like a slave, obedient to its own executioner. But the strong mind is insubordinate. It refuses to be driven by impulses. It creates its own commandments. It says, even though I'm afraid, I'll go. Even though I'm tired, I'll keep going. Even though there are no guarantees, I'll bet on myself. Because it knows that true failure is not falling. It is never having tried with all your heart. That is what defines a superior spirit. Not the absence of pain, but the inability to surrender to it. You need to ask yourself, whom does my mind serve? Does it serve my desire to grow, or my instinct to protect myself? Does it serve life or survival? Because make no mistake, every thought has a master. Either you master your mind, or it will be mastered by old ghosts, traumas, dogmas, beliefs you don't even know you carry. That is why the process of mental strengthening begins with destruction. Destroy the myth of perfection. Destroy the illusion that it will be easy. Destroy the hope that one day you will wake up ready. You will never be ready. Being ready is a lie invented by those who never started. What you need is to start, despite the fear, to continue despite the pain, to persist despite the doubt. This is where true strength comes from, not from feeling safe, but from acting even when everything in you screams to stop. Not from having all the answers, but from living with the right questions. And the right question is always this: what in me is still preventing me from being all that I can be? Your mind will only be strong when you are able to bear the truth about yourself, without masks, without guilt, without denial. When you can look at your own shadows and say, yes, I am that too, and yet I go on. Because true strength comes from integration, not denial. You don't have to be perfect, you have to be whole. A complete human being who feels, who makes mistakes, who falls but doesn't give up. That's why the great ones aren't the most talented or the most intelligent. They are the ones who are most true to themselves. The ones who resist the urge to adapt to please others. The ones who endure the loneliness of being authentic. The ones who walk with fear but don't turn back. The ones who would rather be hated by those who know them than loved by those who don't. A strong mind is made of irreversible decisions. Like rocks that don't retreat in the face of a storm, like mountains that don't apologize for existing. And every time you choose yourself, even when it hurts, even when no one understands, even when everything around you says it's crazy, you grow stronger. But I must warn you, strengthening your mind does not bring comfort, it brings conflict. Because the stronger you become, the more you separate yourself. You separate yourself from the weak. You separate yourself from the complacent. You separate yourself from the manipulable, and that hurts. It hurts to lose connections that felt like love. It hurts to realize that most people would rather be protected than free. It hurts to see that your light hurts the eyes of those who live in the shadows. But this pain is sacred, because it proves that you are moving, that you no longer belong to the same circle of illusion, that you are becoming who you are, and not what others expected of you. And when that mindset forms within you, something changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop asking for permission and start declaring. You stop waiting for the right moment and create the right moment. Reality is no longer something that happens to you. It is something you shape, with thought, with presence, with will, because a strong mind is the manifestation of the will to power, that ancestral, indomitable impulse that says, I want to grow, I want more, I want to become. And that, traveler, is what separates you from the living dead who just repeat yesterday. That's what makes you a creator, not a repeater. Are you ready for this? Are you ready to lose everything that is fragile in the name of something unbreakable? Are you ready to endure the silence of being misunderstood, the coldness of loneliness, the weight of being different in the name of an existence that is worthwhile? Because if you're not, everything I say will be just pretty noise. But if you are, then you are no longer the same. You've already started to rise. I can see it. You're no longer the one who crawled for approval, who was content with crumbs of motivation. You're no longer a beggar for hope. Now, you're starting to forge your own faith. But there's something you still need to understand. A strong mind is not an end, it's a bridge. And what lies on the other side of that bridge? The creation of yourself. Yes, you don't just want strength, you want to create a new being. A being that has never existed before. Not a reflection of the world, not a copy of your parents, not an adaptation of other people's expectations, but a raw, brutal, grandiose affirmation of who you are when no one else is looking. And that, traveler, is dangerous, because creating yourself requires breaking away from everything that once sustained you. It requires that you not only become stronger, but that you take risks, that you not only resist, but dare. A strong mind without daring is just an empty fortress. Safe, but dead. You need to fill that fortress with fire, with risk, with creation. A truly strong mind doesn't just want to survive, it wants to set the world on fire with its presence. It wants to leave its mark on reality. It wants to leave something that no one can erase. And that's only possible if you allow yourself to be unacceptable to the herd. Because everything that is authentic will, at first, be rejected. Everything that is free will, at first, be fought against. Are you willing to do that? You need to become dangerous, not to others, to normality. You need to threaten the structure of the mediocre world with the simple existence of someone who thinks for themselves, who feels deeply, who acts powerfully. You need to be the kind of human being who, when they enter a room, changes the temperature of the environment. When you speak, time stops. When you exist, you remind others of what they could be, but don't have the courage to become. But this presence is not built with charisma, performance, or social strategies. It is born from radical consistency with your own truth. You need to say what you think, live what you preach, embody what you believe, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Because a strong mind is not a theater, it is a temple. And the sacred is not proven with words, but with silence. Do you want to build this mind? Then stop consuming content as an escape. Stop accumulating knowledge as an addiction. Start turning everything you know into action, into decisions, into transformation. Wisdom that does not translate into life is just intellectual vanity. It does not lift you up, it only inflates the ego. Here's another point. The weak mind is a prisoner of the ego, it lives to appear. The strong mind dissolves the ego it lives to be. And being, traveler, is naked. It is exposed, it is contradictory, it is wild. It does not fit in, it does not justify itself, it does not edit itself. It just radiates. This is what awaits you on the other side of pain, a radiant existence. But for that, you must accept the ultimate challenge, the most feared, the most avoided, the confrontation with nothingness. Because deep down, all fear, all hesitation, all mental weakness stems from a single wound, the dread that nothing has meaning, that you fight, grow, conquer, and in the end, everything is dust. But here is the secret that the strong know and the weak cannot bear. Nothingness is not an enemy. Nothingness is the sacred space of creation. It should not be avoided. It should be inhabited. Because it is only when you stop looking for a ready-made, external, divine meaning that you begin to create your own. That is where the free spirit is born. That is where your mind becomes invincible, when it stops asking for guarantees, stops demanding meaning, stops negotiating with fate, and says, I myself will be the meaning. The ultimate strength of the mind is not in protecting itself from chaos, it is in dancing with it. It is not in understanding everything, it is in enduring the mystery. It is not in controlling life, it is in affirming it, in saying yes to the unpredictable, the uncontrollable, the infinite. And in that moment, you become what I have called the Bermensch, not a superhero, not a tyrant, but a creator of values. Someone who no longer needs the approval of the gods because they have become their own master. Someone who no longer fears death because they have already begun to live so intensely that there is nothing to lose. Someone who looks at suffering and says, thank you. You brought me here. And then, finally, your mind will no longer be just strong. It will be luminous. It will be creative. It will be dangerous. It will be divine. And you will walk through the world as one who no longer needs to prove anything, because you carry within you an unshakable conviction. I am the author of my existence. That is true victory. And it cannot be bought, taught, or inherited. It can only be achieved by those who have the courage to die to everything they were to be reborn, as what they never dared to imagine. And so, traveler, you have arrived here, not because I have something to give you, but because something in you was already ready to awaken. All I did was push you into the abyss. The rest you did. You survived the fall. You walked through the rubble of your fragile identity. You endured the silence of the absence of easy answers. And now, before me, there is another being. One who no longer crawls, no longer begs, no longer obeys. One who begins to walk on their own feet and with their own values. But I must remind you, this is not the end. This is the beginning. The strong mind you have built is not a trophy, it is a tool, an instrument to sculpt what you came into this world to be. Because all strength, all overcoming, all inner conquest only has meaning when it is transformed into creation, when you become not just someone better but someone new. Do you want freedom? Then understand, freedom is not doing what you want. Freedom is creating who you are. That is the destiny of the strong. Not serving, not following, not repeating, but founding. Founding new ways of thinking, of living, of loving, of fighting. And that is scary. Because there is no manual, there is no safe path. There is no applause. There is only the wind and the void, and your voice saying, yes, I'm ready. That is the final image I want to leave you with. a lonely human being, facing infinity, with a mind as strong as thunder and a heart as free as lightning. He doesn't know if he will win. He doesn't know if he will be remembered. He doesn't even know if he will see tomorrow. But he walks on, because he no longer has a choice. Because life pulses within him with such fury, such beauty, such power that to stop would be a form of death. You are now that being, and all you have left is to live according to that, create affect, tear the veil of normality. And when someone asks, "Who do you think you are?" you will smile and say, "I don't think, I am," because you didn't come into this world to be understood. You came to be unforgettable. If this journey has left a mark on you, write in the comments, "I am the force that creates what does not yet exist." That will be the seal of your journey. Now go. And remember, the world doesn't need more conformist souls. It needs spirits strong enough to set their own shadows on fire.